very senior comrade down from Coventry for a most humiliating evening when I was expelled from the party, and they tore up my card. If we'd had epaulets, they would have pulled them off. They tore up my card and said to me, "You are an anarchist," and it left a great mark on me. And I thought afterwards, yes, well, I probably am an anarchist, because I believe in the minimum amount of controls, I believe in freedom, I believe in creativity, I believe in communities of people. And what I see happening in media today is this amazing fragmentation. So on one hand, you can do everything now. You can reach, as Fiona does, mounted CD on it. And the idea, it seemed good at the time, I promise you. The idea was that you could read the magazine and pop the CD into your CD player and get a total experience. Well, just imagine what you can now do on an iPad with Music Magazine app. You can, as you're reading the copy, you can be listening to the music. You could be engaging with rich media. Now, I actually think that the days of Music Magazine as a print publication are probably numbered, because, and you know, this is somebody who loves print, because it is not the appropriate medium anymore. It'll be much better when we develop it for use on a tablet.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions in the audience?
I mean, all the panellists and the first speaker all sort of alluded to, but actually it still boils down to content is king, and you know, someone's paying £2.39 because they wish to read The Guardian. It's because of the quality of the writing, question mark sometimes. And what Michael said, it has to be for the right place. A lot of the things that people are talking about, the iPad, are you going to sit on a train, read a music magazine, listen to it? People don't necessarily want to do that. They do things that are appropriate, as we said. You know, if you're looking at teenagers now, most teenagers have BlackBerries, not iPhones, because of the QWERTY keyboard, purely so they can be texting and MMSing and on Facebook. So, you know, it's the content is always the thing that we're talking about.
I don't think it is the content that's king. I think it's the consumer that will decide what is king for them, and it could be content, it could be services, it could be an experience, it could be the way you aggregate something together. I think we all probably on this panel used to sit here and say content is king, but it isn't. Some content is quite ubiquitous, so the services and the experience you can wrap around a piece of content is what's going to make people, going back to I think Kurt's point, consume it and buy it. But it's got to start with that consumer. So in my business, I wish I could say content is king, because we've got great content.
It's still, if you're buying it, it's the content, and whether that content is wrapped around whatever, it's still the content you're delivering. That's why the person comes to you. That's why they come to IPC to buy a magazine. They don't come to you because they like you, anything else. They come to buy your magazines. The majority of people who buy IP magazines have probably never heard of IPC.
Yeah, I don't think any of us would argue that IPC is a brand for consumers. In fact, we keep it deliberately recessive. But developing our business, the heartland of our business is our insight into consumers, and that's what gives us a competitive advantage. So we could sit and say, you know, I happen to have a database of this fantastic content, and I'm going to push it out there. And actually, frighteningly, a lot of people that manufacture products in this country, their whole development process is based on what their factory can produce from an R&D perspective, and then how they can push it and market it to consumers. I think that's an incredibly old model. Our entire business starts with the consumer. Our consumers are telling me that they will pay for services online or through apps. They're not going to pay for content. This is mass market women. It will very much depend on the audience. So what I produce is not determined by the content I have sitting in the archive. It's determined by what experience that consumer wants to have. So we're talking about content, but I would actually like to throw open, as publishers, we may not be talking about content at all in some spaces. We may be talking about launching services which have nothing to do with content actually, but they have something to do with understanding what those consumers want and how to talk to them to get them to consumer service. I mean, we're doing this already. We're earning a lot of money from playing to win, because mass market women like to play to win online. They will pay for that service. They'll pay an awful lot of money. That's not content. That's not our traditional business. So I think what we're doing is actually, in some cases, shifting away from content.
Nicholas, I see you nodding your head. Do you want to add to that, or?
Well, I agree with every word. I do. I mean, I think somewhere on my 18 point was, you know, the the consumer is king, and back to anarchy, I really like it that way. And I think, you know, well, this is a publishing audience, but you know, I speak at lots of universities to you know, young training journalists, and you know, you might wonder why they spent £8,000, whereas you know, their peers, their colleagues are out there sort of just doing it and you know, writing blogs, making websites, because the consumers now have the tools to be media workers as well. I think that there is, I think modern day journalists are going to have to be a lot more adaptable. They're going to have to be more commercially savvy. But more than ever, when I started in newspapers, there was a certain arrogance. We wrote stories, we edited stories because they were things that we liked and our friends liked. And sometimes if a paper failed, it was because you didn't have enough friends. And you know, a great shift for me when I moved from newspapers to magazines was putting the reader first. Well, the reader has never been more important than now. Absolutely focal and at the centre of everything, and deciding how they want their media. They'll be the judge of it and how they want it delivered. So I think for journalists and publishers, of course, the craft skills, you know, how you fashion, how you edit, it's a great time for editing, I think, because in that whole mass of material out there, a lot of it needs to be edited. A lot of the self-indulgence needs to be taken out of it. I rambled a bit there, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's great. Mark or Kurt, do you want to add anything to that?
No.
No? Okay, moving on. Any other questions from the audience? Yes?
I've just recently come across the Freeze magazine. Obviously I've known it for a number of years in its printed format. They're introducing for their kind of online content a limited access to this, and then a subscription. But this also includes the magazine to be delivered to your door on the eight times a year that it's published. I find it quite an intriguing way to kind of entice people, because it gives you, again, a different format to kind of take this content in. The pleasure of flicking through a magazine sometimes, and again, it's touch, but also the complete archive online, which you have access to if you subscribe. The up-to-date newsletters and events that get emailed to you. I was just wondering, do any of your publications take this approach, or are you trying to move more away from the published material? If that makes any sense. Or did I just run?
I mean, we actually publish a lot of online-only brands. So the brand that Fiona was talking to as well, Good to Know, is an online-only brand that has now suddenly become a print brand as well. But you know, I'm sure that has done their research. People obviously have a relationship with that printed magazine, and they don't want to give that relationship up, and they like to consume that content in that way. But at the same time, there is an ease of use of being able to go online and get content, you know, straight away when you want it, how you want it.
So it's limited unless you subscribe.
Yeah.
So you could go to the shop and buy the magazine for £5, or you subscribe for £27 for the eight editions of that year, and then you get full online content. Until then, you're kind of blocked. So it's like a taster website.
I mean, I think in the business-to-business space and a lot of trade publications in our space, that's the model. You pay an annual subscription, you get a magazine come to you through your door every week, plus you get access to a content-rich website. So it's a model that works, and no doubt they will have done their research to prove that it can work.
And Freeze is, I mean, it's either for collectors or people that are highly engaged in the art world. So I think you're absolutely right. It's probably more akin to a B2B offering than it really is a consumer.
I mean, similar art review were trying to do something, but then I got invited to subscribe for free right at its beginning, and I took that up, and now I don't buy the magazine at all because I can download the full PDF right at the beginning. So in one sense, they've kind of, in their introduction, they've kind of lost a majority or some of their kind of market, and I think they're just kind of going too much kind of content user. And it's all about kind of blogging, and it kind of is getting confused and distracted from what its kind of main content is supposed to be about.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, the confusion of not being clear about what your proposition is.